All right, get ready, because we're diving deep into a real estate situation happening right now in Chiang Mai, Thailand.
Yeah.
It's a story about Chinese investment, legal loopholes, and a government crackdown.
A fascinating case study.
Definitely.
A lot of countries are trying to figure out this balance between getting foreign investment and making sure their own people can own land.
Exactly. And we're going to look at an article from the Ocean Worldwide Phuket Real Estate blog. The title is pretty telling. Chiang Mai authorities confiscate properties linked to Chinese nominees.
Oh, wow.
So Chiang Mai, which is a beautiful region up in northern Thailand, has become a real estate hotspot for Chinese investors, especially since COVID.
Right.
We're seeing whole communities popping up, particularly in Hangdong and Sankam districts.
And with that surge in investment, we're also seeing this thing called nominee companies come into play.
Okay, so for our listener, we know Thai law doesn't let foreigners just own land outright.
Nope.
So how are these investors getting around that?
Well, they're setting up these nominee companies. Basically, Thai nationals hold shares on behalf of the foreign investors, in this case, Chinese investors.
Right.
It's a way for them to control properties indirectly.
It's like a legal workaround.
Exactly. A clever way to get around the law, but the Thai government is catching on.
Yeah, it seems like they are.
The Chiang Mai governor, Nirant Sithavorn, has ordered investigations into any properties suspected of using these nominee arrangements.
So he's serious about this.
It seems so.
The article mentions two residential projects specifically, the Bon Pha Luan project in Sankam district, and then there's the Rock Chiang Mai ICM resort in Hangdong. What makes these cases so interesting?
Well, they really highlight how these nominee companies work.
Okay.
You have Thai nationals acting as fronts so that Chinese investors can get land illegally.
Right.
And there are consequences now, real consequences.
Speaking of consequences, the article says the Rock Chiang Mai ICM resort has been ordered to sell 8 houses and plots of land.
Wow.
And they have to do it within 180 days.
That's not very long.
And here's the thing. If they don't, the governor can sell the land himself and keep a 5% fee.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty strong message.
It is, right?
Yeah.
That's actually Section 50 of the Thailand Code in action.
Right.
It gives the governor the power to protect Thailand ownership rights.
Makes sense.
So it sounds like this crackdown is having a real impact.
It seems like it.
The article says transactions involving nominee companies have dropped significantly.
It's not just a symbolic gesture. It's hitting the investors where it hurts their wallets.
Right.
Nobody wants to lose their property or face legal trouble.
So it's working as a deterrent?
Yeah, you could say that.
Could this be a sign that the Chiang Mai real estate market is moving toward more transparency?
Well, it's definitely a step in the right direction, but the big question is, will it scare away legitimate foreign investment? Will people who are willing to follow the rules be afraid to invest now?
That's a really good point.
It's a tricky situation.
We've talked a lot about the legal and financial side of this, but I think it's important to remember the human element.
Right, absolutely.
The people living in these communities.
I was just thinking the same thing.
The article focuses on the legalities and the money, but what about the people who call these properties home? Do they even understand the complexities of these arrangements? What happens to them if the properties are sold?
Their lives are basically caught in the middle of this legal battle.
It really raises questions about the ethics of all of this, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Behind all the headlines and legal jargon, real people's lives are being affected.
So where do we go from here? What does this mean for the future of foreign investment in Chiang Mai? Will things become more regulated, more transparent?
That's the million-dollar question. Thailand needs to protect its people and their land. But foreign investment is so important for economic growth.
Right.
Finding that balance is crucial.
It's a tough situation.
Yeah.
And it's not just limited to Chiang Mai or even Thailand. This is happening all over the world. Balancing foreign investment with local interests is a challenge for every country, especially when it comes to land ownership.
That's so true.
It's a global issue with very real local impacts.
Yeah, you can't predict the future with certainty.
Right.
But this crackdown definitely signals a shift.
It feels like a turning point.
It does.
You know, this situation in Chiang Mai has some global implications.
Definitely.
Before we move on, I think it's worth asking our listener a question. How can countries attract foreign investment while also protecting their own citizens?
It's complex. There's no easy answer.
It's a conversation we need to have.
Absolutely. And to really understand the situation, we need to look at it from every angle.
Right.
We've mainly focused on the Thai perspective so far.
Yeah.
But what about the Chinese investors? What are their motivations? What are their challenges?
It's easy to get caught up on one side of the story,
Yeah, it is.
but to really understand what's going on, we need to consider everyone's point of view.
That's what we're going to do in part 2 of this deep dive.
We'll look at the reasons behind Chinese investment in Chiang Mai, the cultural factors involved, and the potential impact on both Thailand and China's economies.
We'll also look closer at the laws around foreign land ownership in Thailand and see if there are other investment models that could be more sustainable and ethical.
Get ready for part 2, because things are about to get even more interesting.
Definitely.
We'll be back soon to unpack this story even further.
Can't wait. Welcome back.
All right, so we've talked about how Chinese investors are getting into the Chiang Mai real estate market.
Right.
But now let's talk about why. Why Chiang Mai? What's the appeal for these investors?
Well, I think it's a few things. For starters, Chiang Mai has this amazing combination of natural beauty,
Yeah.
a vibrant cultural scene, and a much more relaxed pace of life compared to, say, Bangkok.
It does have a more tranquil vibe.
Exactly. And that's really attractive to a lot of Chinese investors.
I can see why.
And then there's the economic aspect.
Right.
Chiang Mai's cost of living is much lower than in many Chinese cities.
So their money goes further.
Exactly. Property prices in Chiang Mai are very appealing, especially compared to the major cities in China.
Makes sense.
So it's a very tempting investment opportunity, whether they plan to live there themselves, rent it out, or just hold on to it and hope it increases in value.
It seems like a smart financial move.
It can be, but we also need to think about the cultural factors at play.
Okay.
There's a real sense of community among Chinese expats in Chiang Mai.
So it's not just about the money. It's about finding a place where they feel like they belong.
Exactly. Shared language, shared customs, shared traditions. These things create a sense of familiarity and comfort.
Especially for retirees or families who are relocating.
It's like creating a home away from home.
That's a great way to put it.
And that sense of community is only strengthened by the presence of Chinese businesses, restaurants, schools.
It becomes a whole ecosystem.
Exactly.
That brings up another interesting question. What does this mean for Thailand and for China economically? What are the implications of this wave of investment?
Well, that's a complex question. On one hand, this investment can really boost the economy in Chiang Mai.
Oh, so?
It creates jobs in construction, tourism, all sorts of service sectors.
So it's good for the local economy.
It can be, and for China, this outward investment can help to diversify its economy, reduce their dependence on domestic markets.
Sounds like it could be mutually beneficial.
It could be, but it's crucial to manage this investment carefully, make sure it's sustainable, and avoid any negative consequences.
What kind of negative consequences are we talking about?
One concern is inflation.
Okay.
As demand for goods and services increases, prices can go up, and that can impact affordability for local people.
That's true.
It's basic supply and demand.
What about Thai culture? Is there a risk that it could get diluted or overwhelmed?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
It's really important to find that balance between welcoming foreign investment and preserving the local culture.
It's a tricky situation.
Yeah.
And it seems like the Thai government is trying to address these concerns with this crackdown on nominee companies. But is that enough? Are there other ways to make sure that foreign investment is more sustainable and more ethical?
Well, one option could be to look at other investment models that don't involve getting around land ownership laws, things like leasehold agreements.
Right.
Those agreements could give foreign investors long-term rights to use the land without actually violating Thai ownership regulations.
It seems more straightforward.
It could be, and it's important to remember that foreign investment doesn't have to be a zero-sum game.
Right.
With careful planning and collaboration, it's possible to create a situation where everyone benefits: Thailand, China, the investors, and the local communities.
That's the ideal outcome. But it takes open communication, transparency, and a real commitment to finding solutions that work for everyone.
Absolutely.
So far, we've looked at the legal side of foreign land ownership in Thailand, the reasons why Chinese investors are interested in Chiang Mai, and the potential economic and cultural impacts. But there's another layer to this story that we haven't really touched on yet.
And what's that?
The personal stories. The human side of this issue.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
In part 3, we're going to shift our focus to the experiences of the individuals who are caught in the middle of this whole situation.
It should be fascinating.
Welcome back to our deep dive. It's the final part.
Yeah, the final part.
And we're focusing on the human element of this situation in Chiang Mai.
It's important to remember this isn't just some abstract policy debate, you know?
Right?
These are real people whose lives are being directly affected by all of this clash between foreign investment and local land rights.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the economics and regulations, but this is
Yeah.
about people's lives, their hopes, their dreams. They've invested their time, their energy, sometimes their life savings into these properties.
Imagine you're a Chinese retiree. You know, you've fallen in love with Chiang Mai, with the beauty, the tranquility. You've bought a home, you've built a life there. You're part of a community. And then suddenly you might lose it all because of legal technicalities
Wow,
that
yeah.
you might not have even been aware of.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is.
And it's not just retirees. We're talking about families with children being uprooted,
Hmm.
kids who've grown up in these communities. They consider Chiang Mai home.
It's a lot of uncertainty and upheaval for them.
Definitely. And we can't forget about the Thai residents who are living in these areas.
Right.
They've seen their neighborhoods change so rapidly.
Yeah.
They're dealing with rising costs of living. Some of them are even feeling like strangers in their own communities.
That is true.
It's just this really complex web of emotions, perspectives, experiences.
Yeah.
To understand the human impact, we need to listen to these voices. We need to understand their anxieties, their aspirations, their frustrations.
One thing that's really stood out to me is that sense of displacement
Yeah,
that both Chinese and Thai residents are feeling.
right.
Some Chinese expats, they feel stuck between two worlds.
Right, they don't fully belong in either.
Exactly. And for some Thai locals, they feel like their culture, their way of life is being eroded by all this foreign investment.
It's a reminder that globalization, even though it has a lot of benefits,
For sure.
it also creates these tensions and challenges
Absolutely.
that we need to address carefully.
It highlights the importance of fostering cross-cultural understanding and communication.
So, what can be done to bridge this divide? How can we create a more harmonious coexistence between foreign investors and local communities?
I think it starts with empathy.
Yeah.
Recognizing our shared humanity, fostering dialogue, creating spaces for open and honest conversations where different perspectives can be heard and respected.
Finding that common ground.
Exactly, recognizing that both Chinese investors and Thai residents have legitimate interests and desires.
And making sure that foreign investment benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Absolutely. It's about moving beyond a purely transactional approach to investment and taking a more holistic perspective, considering the social, the cultural, the environmental impacts.
This deep dive into the Chiang Mai real estate situation has been eye-opening. We've uncovered the legal and economic complexities, but more importantly,
Yeah,
we've explored the human stories at the heart of it all.
I agree.
We've looked at the motivations of the Chinese investors, the concerns of the Thai residents, and the search for a path toward a future that's equitable and sustainable for everyone involved.
It's been a really fascinating discussion.
It has. And as we wrap up, we want to invite you, our listener, to consider the broader implications of what's happening in Chiang Mai. How can we ensure that foreign investment leads to positive change, that it promotes both economic growth and social harmony? How can we build bridges of understanding across cultures and create communities where everyone feels a sense of belonging?
Those are important questions to consider.
These are questions that go way beyond Chiang Mai. They touch upon the very core of globalization and our increasingly interconnected world. They're questions that demand our attention, our empathy, and our collective wisdom as we navigate the complexities of our shared future.
I couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.